Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. If you are new, you probably tripped and fell on your way to the Tim tracker. Either way, I'm grateful. If you are returning, you're probably here for one of three reasons. Number one, the highest production value that YouTube can offer you lives on my channel, specifically when it comes to movie reviews. Love of my life, Chad, partner in crime on all things cinema, Chad and Mel Movie Hours. If you're here for movie reviews, blessings to you. Thank you to anybody who's watched those. If you're here for Disney content, guess what? So am I. So thank you again to anybody that's watched any of my vlogs or POVs or any of it. I invite you to check out my Women of Imagineering series. It's like a project that I'm really proud of. Or thirdly, you are here for Politics of Periods content. This is something that is near and dear and close to my heart, so if you tripped and fell on the way to the Tim tracker and landed here, it's your lucky day, because tonight is a Politics of Periods video, so cheers. If you're not familiar with my Politics of Periods series, I will link in the iCards and in the description the playlist. But more specifically the video that kind of gives you a higher level overview of why I am invested in menstrual equity, what the politics of menstruation means, and more specifically how I got involved in this world, why this is a subject matter that is a passion project for me. And that is because of a nonprofit called #HappyPeriod. So again, I will link playlists and videos for you to kind of get the 101. But today we are here to talk about something very specific, which is quarantine, periods, pandemics. Where are we? So this is the first Politics of Periods video that I have filmed since COVID-19 has hit. So we were already in dire straits when it came to supplying the underserved women and menstruators nationwide and worldwide with menstrual hygiene products before the pandemic hit, but now we are obviously in different circumstances. So that being said, tonight's discussion is going to be around periods and pandemics. Specifically, I'm going to be referencing a Newsweek article that came out on March 17th, if I have that right, Newsweek article that came out on March 17th by Jennifer Weiss-Wolf. So I will link that below. This is a discussion that I don't think has broad enough reach. Her article and one other were literally the only two articles or any mention I could find online about menstrual equity in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. So again, I invite you to watch some of the earlier videos on #HappyPeriod, the nonprofit that I work with and helped found the Bay Area chapter of, to get a little bit more context for what I'm talking about, which, long story short, is providing menstrual hygiene products, again, to the underserved and homeless in our backyards. But more than that, it's about how do you do that even with a team, even with an organization behind you when something like this happens. So I want to talk a little bit about the article first, and then I will talk at the end about ways and suggestions that you can get involved, which I tend to do at the end of all of these videos, but very specifically ways to get involved and support women in your community who might be in need of said hygiene products in the midst of COVID while keeping yourself safe as well. So without further ado, I want to again reference and just kudos to Jennifer Weiss-Wolf, who authored this Newsweek article on March 17th, literally entitled Periods Don't Stop for Pandemics. And she does cite a secondary article, which I'll also link below, because she's going to reference what some of the nurses on the front lines in China were undergoing, and we'll get into all of that. I do want to preface her article, which we are about to get into, with one thing. And it's very simple, and I've done deep dives on this on my other politics of periods videos, but it's as simple as this. We as women, educated women, privileged women, take for granted that we have access to products that I'm not even going to talk about homeless women right now. I'm just going to talk about the fact that most women in this country, we're not even going to talk about other countries right now or the third world, don't have regular access to menstrual hygiene products. They're either not provided, they're not affordable. This is a problem, and it's widespread. It's a national problem, and it is due part and parcel to the fact that you have ads for menstrual hygiene products that never show the color red. Everything that represents blood is shown in blue because God forbid we show the color red. On top of that, we have, on top of that psychology and that programming and that lack of just thinking about the topic, which even I didn't think about until I was 33 years old. Again, watch my other videos and I'll do a little bit of a deeper dive into how I got to where I am now with this thought process. But on top of the fact that the media and ads don't show the color red, you have a tampon tax, which is just prolific. I mean, the tampon tax, the pink tax, goes beyond the tampon tax. It taxes things like ladies' razors is a good example. Ladies pay a premium on the same exact razor that a man would get by the same brand because it's for women, i.e. pink. But the tampon tax is something that is, I implore you to do your own due diligence and research on as it applies in your state. But long story long, the tampon tax is a tax on menstrual hygiene products. It's real, it exists, and it is it's a scourge. It's a scourge on not just menstrual equity, but it's a scourge on history. It's just, it's a whole thing. So you have this, just as this preface, you have this just context and this lay of the land that I want to set down, this foundation, which is even for women who are doing well, who are, let's say, gainfully employed, let's say they're white, let's say they're me, there's still a tax. In the best case scenario, the products are still taxed. Now, work your way backwards and imagine what a worst case scenario would look like. Imagine what not having a job would look like. Imagine what being on food stamps or using WIC would look like, because neither of those things are going to get you feminine hygiene products. And feminine hygiene products are already overpriced. Take a step further backwards. You're homeless. What are you going to do? What are you going to do when it's your time of the month and you're homeless? How are you going to get products? What are you going to have to go without in order to get products? This is just the baseline. This is just the preface. So with that being said, I need another sip of wine. Let's talk about this article. Again, shout outs to Jennifer Weisswolf for being like literally one of two people talking about this right now. So we need to talk about the fact that this video is being produced and coming out on April, it's April 20, I don't even know what day it is. It's April 22nd. And living in the Bay Area, this is a month and a half into our shelter in place. Coronavirus is causing the majority of the country and the world to not go about their daily routine. And as such, first responders, more specifically medical healthcare professionals, i.e. nurses and doctors that are on the front lines working in hospitals to help those of us that are infected and sick, are already working long hours, are already grossly underpaid, and I'm talking about nurses right now. It's not a new story, it's a tale as old as time. Put yourself in the position, imagine if you will, being a nurse, not even an ER nurse, just a regular nurse, You have to fit in your bathroom breaks. There's no formal clocking in and clocking out from 12 to 1 for lunch. There's no scheduled 15-minute breaks twice a shift. You literally are working and on your feet and running around, being of service the entire duration. So let's extrapolate that and put ourselves in the context of said person in a crisis such as the one that we're living in right now. This article talks about this very issue. We have to remember that women, and I'm not going to get into a conversation about pronouns. I've talked about this to death in many other videos. When I say women, stay with me, you know what I mean. Women make up the majority of healthcare professionals. This is a fact. I tried to find statistics on the global number, but they were like really varied, so I had no luck with that. But women making up the majority of healthcare workers, specifically nurses, is, Google it, it's factually accurate. The Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Bureau, take that from the top, the Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics do show that 80% of the healthcare workers in the United States are women. Let me take that from the top so you can hear it one more time. The Center for Disease Control and the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, do confirm that in the United States, 80% of our healthcare professionals are made up by women. Now, at this point in the article, Miss Weisswolf is going to reference news coming out of China, which, as we know, being April 22nd, 2020, that China was kind of the frontline, ground zero, if you will, for coronavirus. So she does reference an article, which I will link below, where a nurse in China was interviewed specifically about what her experience was being a healthcare worker, being female, biologically female, on the front lines whilst on her period. And this nurse's name is Miss Zhang. She is a nurse. And what she was describing in this article is just absolutely, like, it's heartbreaking and it's shocking, but it's also not shocking. It's not surprising. Like, I'm not shocked by this shit at this point anymore. Sorry, I don't know what my hair is doing because, you know, that's a priority right now. On our best days, we're not taking care of women. We're not taking care of our healthcare professionals. And we're certainly not thinking about what women do when they bleed. So if I go down these tangents again, you're just going to have to forgive me. I'm so sorry. I'm taking another sip of wine. Don't even get me started on the governor of Florida, my home state. Don't even get me started. Anyhow, so essentially what Miss Zhang details in her interview is that as somebody that is a nurse working in China on the front lines of the COVID-19 epidemic, is that aside from the lack of masks, ventilators, ventilators apply to patients, but aside from the lack of masks, protective gear that a nurse or doctor would normally wear under normal circumstances, the gross lack of protective gear that's already not available to our healthcare professionals aside, let's talk about what that lack looks and feels like when you're also bleeding. I'm not even going to talk about pain. I'm not even going to talk about cramping right now. I'm not going to talk about discomfort. I'm just going to talk about the physiological process of bleeding whilst trying to caretake for other people in a triage environment on the front lines in a crisis. Here we go. Fasten your freaking seatbelts. The hospital in Shanghai where she worked said that it would donate hormonal birth control to the female nurses and healthcare professionals in the hospital she worked at in order to, and I quote, suppress periods to postpone female team members' unspeakable unspeakable special periods, end quote. Hear that one more time. The hospital she worked at in Shanghai said it would donate hormonal birth control pills. So somehow it's easier to get birth control than it is to get fucking always with wings. It would get birth control pills to suppress periods in order to, quote, postpone female team members' unspeakable special periods, end quote. When these women spoke up, and she details this in the interview, when these women spoke up about the lack of the ability, A, to get to the bathroom just to pee, let alone to take care of their menstrual needs, they rallied. And the response was, and I quote, this is from the administration in the Shanghai hospital in which she works, the response was, quote, "These women lacked the spirit of devotion." That was the administration's response to them asking for pads. I don't even, are you guys drinking? Because I know I am. She was quoted as saying she felt her spirit was breaking down slowly. And I'm sure this is happening for every healthcare professional right now, but specifically, I would love to hear from any nurses that might be watching this, any healthcare professionals that are women, that are female, biologically female, that have their menses. What are you doing right now to cope? What do you need that you're not getting? I would love to learn so that we can help better support you. In response to this particular incident in Shanghai, volunteers, thank God, sent 2,000 adult diapers to support 500 women. Not pads, not tampons, but basically they provided adult diapers, which was better than nothing, obviously, and thank you to those volunteers. But they provided 2,000 adult diapers, which means that they weren't giving these women an opportunity to go to the bathroom and take care of themselves and remain hygienic. The best that they got was the opportunity to continue running around in their own fucking blood and probably piss and God only knows what else while they're working to take care of us. So it begs the question, how sanitary is it for a healthcare worker who is themselves unwell and probably not at their most sanitary taking care of us? Anyways, that is the article that is referenced by Ms. Weiss-Wolf. We talked a little bit about the tampon tax. Again, I implore you to do a little bit of due diligence and figure out if your state does have a tampon tax. If it does, find out how much it is. Just familiarize yourself with the topic. If it doesn't sit right with you, take the time to pick up the phone, take the time to write a letter to your congressman and set a precedent. There are many states in the United States, well, I shouldn't say many, there's a sea change happening very slowly. And there's other countries that have already repealed it, Canada being one of them. But there are 24 states right now in the US that have mandated that menstrual products be in public facilities. Now, that includes hospitals, that includes schools, that includes homeless shelters, and correctional facilities. 24 states. So basically half of the union is on the bandwagon. The rest of us, we need to get our shit together. They do reference a New York Democratic Representative, Grace Meng, who, under her administration, I guess, set a precedent such that FEMA must use grants that it receives to purchase said menstrual hygiene products in the event of an emergency, whatever emergencies fall under FEMA's umbrella. They are required to provide menstrual hygiene products to homeless shelters and to the underserved during emergencies. Let's start. It's just really shocking to me and upsetting. I shouldn't say shocking. It's really upsetting to me that this is just, it's such a fundamental, right and, you know, you go to a public restroom, even if you're homeless, or you go to, there's usually toilet paper, right? God willing, there's toilet paper, but we can assume 99.9% of the time, if you go into a public space, toilet paper is provided. If you're a menstruator, a pad or a tampon is just as vital, and it just very simply is not provided in half of the states in this country. 31 states still need to repeal the tampon tax. So again, familiarize yourself with your state's legislation, figure out if this is important to you, and if so, write your congressman, start a petition, or grassroots, start doing drives and donations, collecting these items and providing them to the places in your community that need them most. We'll get into this in a couple more minutes on suggestions and solutions for what you can do. But yes, take control of the situation and just fix it. Because if we wait on legislation, you know, we might as well shit in one hand and wish in the other. Yeah, so the other thing I wanted to mention about this issue, and this is going to actually translate into another video that will be coming next week, is the surge in domestic violence that's happening in the midst of COVID and specifically sheltering in place, lockdowns, women that were already at risk and men who were already at risk of domestic violence are now at more risk, and I will put the hotline below in the description for the National Domestic Abuse Hotline. But these things are skyrocketing right now, and not only just police reports, but deaths among women specifically as a result of domestic violence during the last 45 days that we've been dealing with COVID have skyrocketed. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that, as that's going to be something I'm going to talk about in the next video. But for right now, I think it's just important to highlight this article that Miss Weiss-Wolf wrote, which is again entitled "Periods Don't Stop for Pandemics." Global Citizen also has an article on it. I'll link both of them below, but let's just, to round this out, talk about what you can do to, if you are feeling the calling, if you are so inclined, what you can do in your own backyard to help women that are just like you and me, that are gainfully employed and maybe just can't get to the store and get their essentials, all the way to living in a city like New York or here in the Bay Area or anywhere where there's high populations of homeless people, specifically those in encampments who do not have access to these products as is, and certainly that has lessened as a result of the pandemic. Less people are going out to do anything, let alone do donations to people on the street. So what are some things that you can do? First and foremost, you could start a fundraiser. You could do this via something like GoFundMe. GoFundMe's great. I have no personal qualms with it, but GoFundMe has had its issues with scams and fraud, so just be wary if that's the platform that you choose to use to fundraise. I would suggest something like a Facebook campaign, or just, there's a plethora of other platforms that are quite legitimate that you can use to fundraise if that's what you choose to do. And in doing so, you can funnel those funds to local homeless shelters, domestic violence shelters, sober living homes, to your local schools. Schools are barely able, kids are out of school right now. Everybody's doing virtual school. So, most kids that are already underserved aren't getting maybe the one meal that they would normally get a day. So those girls are getting, or are not getting, the pads or tampons they would normally get during that time of the month from their school bathroom or through their clinic. So figure out a way to fundraise and or funnel those donations to schools, homeless shelters, sober living homes, domestic violence shelters, public and private schools, anywhere where common sense would suggest to you that these things would normally be, and where there's a need. On top of fundraising, a more practical thing you could do is set up a drive where you don't have to have anybody over. You could do it over Zoom, because this is life now. Everything is happening over Zoom. But you could have a hashtag happy period drive virtually, where everybody gets on Zoom. Maybe you talk to your community about the issues. Invite the women, the men, the girls, the boys in your community onto a Zoom session. Talk about this issue. Figure out what your community needs. Figure out how to get it to them. And, have cocktail, have some coffee, socialize, and then get everyone to donate tampons, pads, panty liners, cups, anything you think your community needs. Reusables are great, but it's difficult if you're specifically going to be serving a homeless community, or a homeless population that doesn't have access to water, to keep those items hygienic. So for right now, I would suggest the best thing to do would be host a virtual drive, get everyone to, on their next, Amazon order, or the next time they go to the grocery store, or wherever they're getting their essentials, ask them, hey, can you spare enough to get a couple of bags of pads, or a couple of, boxes of tampons? And make a list of the facilities in your community that can use those, and have them sent directly via Amazon to said shelters, sober living homes, etc. If you're living in a community like the Bay Area, where you can walk out your door and find 60 people living in an encampment under an overpass in tents, I would suggest very simply, if you're able to collect actual physical inventory like pads and tampons, do so. And if you have access to a vehicle, drop them off as close as you can, make an announcement. That will obviously take care of itself. Or simply place them maybe on a intersection or a corner, in a basket with a sign that says, please help yourself. I mean, it's really that simple, especially if you live in a community like the Bay Area, where there are encampments and homeless people literally every 10 feet. It's that easy. Set them outside your door, on your front lawn, put a sign up, put them on your intersection, invite your community, get on your next door app and say, hey, on the corner of First and Grand, we're gonna have a big basket, and if you have extra pads, extra tampons, put them in there. There's going to be a sign up so people can come and grab them as they need them. It can be that simple. But I think fundraising is always going to be essential, and what better time to do it now when we have nothing else to do. Secondly, host a hashtag happy period party over Zoom. Get your community involved, get them online, get them in a meeting, get to know some new people, bring your community together and say, hey, this is what's up. These are the shelters that need our support. There's an encampment over there. There's these people over here. There's these people over here. Let's figure out how we can get our products to one location where people can access them, or how we can schedule drop-offs where those people with vehicles can drop them off at said shelters. Domestic violence, sober living, homeless, schools, churches, etc. Do a little bit of research, do a little bit of digging. We've all got extra time on our hands. This is an issue, and most importantly right now, and the point of this video, periods and pandemics, is that our healthcare professionals, the nurses, the women that make up 80% of the healthcare workforce in this country, don't have access to proper protective gear. So they probably don't have access to menstrual hygiene products or enough time to stop and do what they need to do to keep themselves hygienic. Find out where your hospitals are. Call the hospital administrators. Find out, or just don't even find out. Screw finding out. Go to your local hospitals and drop off a basket, boxes of pads and tampons and say, thank you nurses, thank you doctors, thank you administration, thank you security, thank you healthcare workers. Here's some extra stuff to make your life easier. These are just super simple ideas. I don't know what else to say. Like, this whole topic is already upsetting, and it's exponentially upsetting given the current circumstances. So how long can tires screech for? My God. Just find out what your community needs. Get on Nextdoor, get on your community apps, find out, and solve the problem. I mean, it's that simple. Like, everybody has extra stuff lying around. Everybody has the ability to make an effort. And even if you don't have the money to buy extra stuff for somebody else, just having a Zoom meeting where people can get engaged and learn about the situation, when the storm passes, maybe they will be the next person to provide a homeless shelter or somebody on the street with exactly what they need. So yeah, I encourage you to read the article. I encourage you to remember that menstrual equity does not stop in the midst of a crisis. In fact, it's the opposite. And just, use this as an opportunity to get to know your friends and your family and your strangers a little bit better, and leverage that to serve the people that really need your help. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I invite you to comment below with any suggestions that I have not thought of, and please subscribe. These videos will be coming out weekly as usual. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, and most importantly, comment with any ideas, because I really think it's important to disseminate this information and learn from one another. But with that being said, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the other side.